I think last time we talked, we touched on like because you help a lot of startups with like tiny or limited budget. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think brands feel like, oh, I don't have enough budget to even run an influencer program. But obviously, there's still a few hacks or ways to kind of go around that and still make it work. So yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. But what's limited budget, would you say?
I would say limited budget is like five to, oh, well, it depends on the company, I think, and also the product. So like there's some companies that like it's easier to like replenish product if it's like disposable, like a soda or something. Whereas like a shirt you can wear on repeat. And that's kind of more opportunity for long-term partnership without constantly sending them product. When it comes to like limited, I'd say like probably like 5,000
Mm.
for like a few quarters. It really depends though, like the brand's overall goal. I've had most of the companies I work with, to be honest, like don't always have an established budget, which I don't always recommend but they are testing. So they're really more working on like a product in exchange for content, but also like starting out with seeding and building into a paid long-term opportunity. Um, but definitely wanting to like make sure that it's beneficial on both the influencer and the brand side and that we're not taking advantage of the influencer's audience and abilities just because we don't have a big budget.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like what I hear from some brands that are just getting started, they think that they can like seed or gift products and expect stuff. But can you instead just tell me how should a startup, if they come to you and then have like no budget or like very limited and they want to do
Yeah.
something with influencer, what do you usually recommend? What's your process? How do you help them? I'd love to hear that.
Well, yeah, I think a big thing for me is I hear from a lot of influencer marketing experts is like it's a lot of educating the people their clients you're working with because people have this perception of influencer but don't always look into like the cost, the what is included in that initial cost and what needs to be added on, like ad usage rights and um, you know, certain things that are required based on FTC guidelines from the influencer and from the brand. So I always let them know that like I think seeding is the best approach, but you can't guarantee any posting from seeding opportunity. This is an opportunity to get your product in front of an influencer that you feel like would love your product as well as their audience would resonate with your product. But the most you can do is send it to them, send, a nice note that stands out that maybe make them want to post. And if they don't post within like a week of you sending the product, it's always important on my end to follow up. I like to do it through like DMs directly through the brand and just send like a friendly, like, hey, nothing like, when are you going to post? But just making sure you got the product. Let us know if you have questions. I think that's like a gentle reminder, but also not like forcing anything and like just letting them know that like you're wanting to hear from them and like they're not just one in 1,000 that you're sending to. And I've seen a pretty great response rate by doing that follow up. Stats wise, I've heard that like posting from seeding can range anywhere from like 30 to 70% of people posting who receive. And I've definitely had more in that higher 70 to 80% range because I'm interacting with the influencers we send to, not only through DMs, but also through like commenting on their personal Instagrams that aren't just posts about our product, like and engaging them in other ways where they feel like you're building something with them versus just wanting that product being shown on their page and it just being like a transaction.
Yeah. And what would you say? Because I'm also sure that many brands have tested this and they probably are a lot under the post rate 30%. If they only like 5%, 10%, like really low, what do you think they are doing wrong? Like what are usually the mistakes you see?
Well, one big thing I see is they're not testing a bunch of different genres. They think like, oh, I'm a menswear brand. Let's only reach out to men, and this type of style, or whatever. But it's those people who like are the comedy influencer that like has cool style but doesn't talk about it all the time, or like this girl who just wears like cool grungy clothing that like that product could fit into their demo and create high conversion. Based on the other people who like you might think right off the bat like, oh, they're a perfect fit, but they're getting that same product constantly from other brands. So it's just another PR moment for them that doesn't stand out. So testing different genres you might not think would be your core demo, I think is really important if you have the product to do that. And I think too, like a lot of people in the startup space, especially like those higher up, seem to think that like, the amount of followers really matters, and like they have to be celebrity status. But to be honest, those are the people who are least engaged with their audience. So like they don't have as high engagement. They're not really posting things that are engaging. They're posting just like photos of themselves and not really like content that you want to watch. So I think like making sure you're open to all different levels of influencers is really important, because it's those ones that like, to be honest, that are more nano or micro level, those smaller ones that you see the highest engagement, conversion, and you can also grow with as a brand if you're small and really kind of like build an opportunity with them.
Yeah. And if you're like a super small brand, which is, let's say you have like 500 followers, because that's usually the case sometimes with these brands.
Yeah.
Are they too small on Instagram to even do the influence marketing? Or how do you, if you get those type of brands, like how do you help them? How do you start finding creators for them if they just have a few hundreds and just getting started? I mean, they could have a big brand, or like they are active and have sales, everything. It's just like haven't been active on Instagram, so they just have a few hundred followers.
Yeah. So I work with some clients who have a few hundred. I'd say like the number one thing that I like to tell them is patience is really important. And it's all about like building the relationship. I still like to do through DMs, but to be honest, I'm very fortunate in that I'm part of a network called WIM, which is Women in Influencer Marketing. So I have a lot of great talent manager relationships I've built, as well as brand relationships I've built, that I can really tap for opportunities for those brands that don't have the brand awareness and may not get a reply on DM because they're stuck in the like spam folder. Yeah. I also like to like sometimes comment on some of the influencers if I followed up a few times and just be like, sent you a DM. I don't like to be spammy like that, but I also like want them to know that like we're really interested and like there's opportunity. So yeah, it's definitely been a test and learn. I will say it's harder with those who don't have a high social following, but I think like being engaged as a brand and interacting with like other brand pages, influencer pages, gets you like profile views, whether on TikTok or Instagram. So I think like it's a twofold method. But having someone, whether a consultant or in-house, that has connections within the influencer space will prove really helpful when it comes to startups, because you can quickly just like grab those go-to influencers that you know are willing to post or have a good, relationship with their audience and work with them right off the bat. But also tap into other relationships with other people within the field.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because if you already have a relationship with them, it's just a nice intro, and maybe they're more open. Just let's test your product, like, and maybe you can even just get feedback. They don't even post, but you can at least get some feedback if they are a little bit bigger and start building something.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think there's always pluses to seeding. I think like I always say to them too, like you're not going to get that post maybe right away. Like sometimes they'll organically share your product months later. Especially if it's a product that like isn't like a CPG brand where it may expire or you use it up. it may be featured organically in a video and not just be shared in a story as like a gift.
Yeah.
So there's always opportunity.
But if we pretend that we don't go through your special connections, you just go right away and DM them. What's your go-to DM to get a response? That must also be tricky because you don't want to write essays and you don't want to be too short. Like, what would you say is the best way to DM? What do you write?
So I always say keep it short and sweet, and I think that's something that like some of the founders I work with like are afraid to do because they want to like share all the benefits and give everything. And obviously we want to make sure that like the influencers knowledge about the product, but we also want to get their attention without like them losing their attention span of reading this long thing. So I always say like go in, just say like, hey, big fans over here at brand name. We'd love to send product your way. Let us know if you're interested. And typically I get a reply. I'll always follow up. If not. And then I also sometimes like to add into like, because they're a smaller brand, like there's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. Like we're really open to making things work if they enjoy the product. So that's a big thing I do. And I've seen a good response rate there. But yeah, short and sweet, it's my go-to.
Yeah. What's not working that you've tested over DMs? Big no.
I tested video of like the founder talking. Actually, because like I have one founder I work with who is really great on creating content. She really knows her product and she speaks really well to it. She's kind of worked in the field of where her product is. And so I was like, I think instead of writing something long, like maybe we'll get their attention more with like testing a video that has like a person in front of it and really shows like you and your knowledge of the product. We didn't get really any response rate from it. We saw people see it and then they just like didn't say anything. So I don't know who actually watched it, but we were trying different methods to kind of engage in a different way. But I think personalization is key. Making sure like they don't feel like you're just copying and pasting, whether that be DM or email. I think you'll get a better response rate. And making sure they feel like there's like an actual human managing the brand account versus like automated outreach.
Yeah. You hate when you get those.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell like things missing, like influencers know, and I've heard like talent managers say it, like you can tell when a brand hasn't really looked into an influencer and they're just like cold outreaching. It's very apparent. So I think that's number one. And that's like your first impression as a brand. So you really want to be careful as to how you're approaching an influencer from the start.
Yeah. But another thing I always like questions I get from these startups is like they hope obviously to get sales right away. Like those are sometimes the expectations, and even if they do seeding. But what would you say is more realistic to think about if you're a founder, you have a few hundred followers? What would you say should be the goal in the beginning? Obviously it can depend on your products, but if you just think about like D2C brands, what should they expect? What should be realistic goals after like 3 months, just testing out the first campaign?
Yeah. So I think one thing that people need to know is there's influencers who convert and there's influencers who spread brand awareness. There's some who just have an audience who are willing to buy whatever they kind of put out and may not have the best content you want to use, but like, okay, they could probably convert, they could probably get sales. So I actually had an instance with a client where like they were kind of disappointed because their product didn't get really any sales through the influencers. But I think there's a few things to consider, and this is what I've said, which kind of speaks to your question. One, like this is like very shortly after the post is posted. I think two, there's a lot, you may provide like a link for influencers or a promo code, but honestly, I don't typically go through the influencer promo code or link. I just go back later and find the website. So it's hard to attribute influencer sales. So I would say like making sure you have like a checkout option that says like where you heard about us. I think it's great to learn, you know, was it attributed to influencer? I think too, there's other ways in sales that shows the campaign was a success. Brand awareness is huge, seeing that like, okay, how well did this paid post on their channel do compared to their organic? It's probably not going to do as well because that's just how the algorithm works. But like, were people engaged? How many people saved the product? If they saved the product or the post, those are people who are likely going to come back and want to purchase. They're interested in some respect. So like, that's a great sign. I think like the first step is good engagement on the post. And if you see that, that's an opportunity to continue to partner in other ways. But it's not, I don't think any brand should think of a partnership unless it's like maybe a celebrity, like a huge celebrity. I don't think you should think of influencer partnership as one-off. They're not going to create a sale off of one post, just like you know, with any marketing, you have to see it like 6 or 7 times to convert. You want the goal, if a brand can do it, is to partner with an influencer on a long-term basis where they're repeatedly showing the product, whether it be in stories, their reels, static, whatever, so that like it's much more of an organic seeming partnership, and not just like them trying to sell a product. So I think that's really important. And I think that's also what influencers want. They want to be authentic to their audience and not have it come off as like, okay, this was paid, which they have to say. So that's, I would say long-term is important to consider.
Yeah. But when you, based on your experience, what do you usually get if you see them? Is it comment to, what's most common? What type of format on Instagram is most common, would you say? Is it stories, reels, feed posts? Just thinking like brands, if they're going to do this and just try it out, what can they expect? Like, is it, can I even get feed posts? Is that common? Yeah.
For seeding?
Yeah, if you just like, if you look at the post rate, what kind of formats do you get? Like what?
Oh, it's for seeding. It's going to be pretty much stories.
Yeah.
Unless they like, I think there's product placement moments like with drinks or snack brands or beauty brands. Like there'll be a moment where they incorporate it into a routine or have it there, but they might not be speaking directly to the product and selling it. So I think, so from a seeding perspective, you should be expecting a story share. You should never be expecting a post unless it's someone super small that's like so excited about the product and just really wants to like do this. But it's a no strings attached situation unless you're going through like, I've worked on platforms like Aspire, which I really love. That you like have to, there is like a product only campaign where they sign an agreement and you can get rights to content and they have to post in exchange for product. But that's like honestly very rare these days to get like high quality engaged influencers who will post in exchange for product.
Yeah, but if
post
exactly, but if you then go up organically, if you think that you don't have a tool, how do you source? How do you source them on Instagram? What are the best approaches, would you say, to find these smaller ones that are just open for thing?
So I obviously use my network, but separate from that, I like to take an approach of honestly just like searching by like hashtag, and I go under the brand's account because I have access, and I'll put like, I'll kind of curate their For You page for both Instagram and TikTok or whatever. So, and YouTube. So it will come up with things that like of people who you'd want to be partnering with. So like beauty hacks or like streetwear style, like certain things that like I'd want to find influencers in, and that kind of helps. But I also kind of will go under brand accounts that are similar to ours and who's posting, what influencers are posting about them. I'll even do like cool like NYC bars that like influencers will go to and who's going there. So you just have to get really creative. Like it's not just like find the influencer that everyone's working with. It's kind of delving deeper and like understanding who your competitors are and who they're working with and what trends people are doing around your product and what influencers are doing that. So I like to dedicate, I help with the community engagement on the social channel for brands. So I like to dedicate like 15 to 30 minutes a day per brand to just like scroll through and engage with influencers, but also that gives me the opportunity to find people that could be a good partner. So yeah, that's my approach. I take a pretty manual approach, which like maybe for those wanting to see to like thousands, that's more of like a platform situation.
Yeah.
But for those who want to be really like strategic and niche, I think like really diving in is important.
Yeah. Should you be local when you are a small brand and looking for creators, or can you go with any US profile and just test out? What would you say is, does it make sense to do both, or yeah?
Yeah, so I think it makes sense to do both. I think the thing with local and like is the influencer might be based in New York City, but that doesn't mean their audience all is. So like you have to consider that from like if you're doing an event and you're trying to target like NYC people, just because that person's in New York City doesn't mean their followers are all there and will be able to go to a pop-up or something. So I think like location can matter for certain circumstances. But typically most influencers skews kind of go towards the bigger cities like LA, New York, if they're US based. So it's not like, I don't think location matters, and that more so matters if you're doing like a campaign that's like going to a store that's in a certain location and wanting to target people who are near those locations so they'll go purchase, that type of thing.
Yeah, makes sense. I feel like thing I've heard is like sometimes it could be good to, if you see it, maybe find at least 15 friends or like people that know each other and only gift them, so you get kind of the frequency and people talking about you, and you see.
I heard that from you the other day, or not, but I heard that somewhere. Maybe it was LinkedIn, but I heard that same thing because then it feels like everyone's talking about this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If sending it to like 10 or 15 and they're all wearing the shirt or they're all using the product, it feels like it's much wider of a seeding effort than it may actually be.
Exactly.
And I've for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially in some huge markets like the US, where you obviously cannot take over the whole US in 1 week. But then if you maybe only focus on like a city or even like a student town or college town,
yeah,
if that's your audience, I think that could be very smart. Or I know it's working for brands we work with at least. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's been a struggle for some brands to figure out. And I've tested it with certain things. It was hard too to find locations of influencers. One big thing that people on the brand side always say, like, put your location in your profile. Like, I don't know where you're located unless like you put it there. And it makes our life easier to be like, okay, you're not located in the US or like you're not located in New York. So we don't like, waste the time having a conversation for specific initiative.
Yeah. Now I just shared, was it today or yesterday, or last week, a hack they could use is to, obviously if you go with the smaller ones, if they have just a few thousand followers, most of their audience is probably from the same city as her, so like the hometown. Maybe she lives in LA, but if she follows like her local hockey team or a local restaurant, you can actually use those kind of those local businesses to find new creators. Because if you follow a restaurant, like, I don't know, in a small town, like the ones that follow that restaurant, they must come from that town. Like it's just a guess, but that's like
wildly big, like popular restaurants, but that's true. And that's kind of how I found some influencers when I was mentioning earlier, like going under like Dante's in New York. Like they're a cool like bar, and I would go under them to see like, okay, who's following them, who has like a check or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we go back to like budget and stuff like that, what is, when you jump on a call and they say we have X amount of budget, when do you feel like that is not even worth doing it, and when do you feel like that's reasonable, let's do it? Do you have any thoughts on that, how to get started, and what should you put this out?
I don't ever say like that. Well, I've said this is what's realistic for your budget. I've never said like you're not gonna, like, I can't do that, but I've said like, okay, you have, $2,000, that's it, like for this test, like you're likely gonna get 2 influencers out of that, and like I can try to get usage rights in there, but that might not be included. I mean, my number one rule, and this is unfortunately something I run into a lot, is like I have a lot of clients who just don't have a budget in mind, but that just delays the process. So it's like I need to understand what your goals are as a brand, and so I have some clients who are like, I'll do seeding and affiliate, or we'll test affiliate because like I can't pay for like a static post, or they'll do like UGC because that's like kind of the, like, not the best of both worlds, but you're getting influencer style content for your feed that you can repurpose at a lower cost. So yeah, I would say like if someone says I have $200 to spend, then I'd say, yeah, you're not even going to get UGC content with that. But I'd say like 1,000 is like something you could work with one influencer on. But that's probably like micro level. And I don't know if it's worth it if you only have one to test it on, because you have nothing to compare it to. Yeah. So I think you want to have a budget of around $5,000 for like a campaign to really be able to test a few different types of content, and also utilize that and test through like paid ads to the brand channel. Otherwise, you're kind of just like throwing money out without anything to compare it to. So that's my rule of thumb if they're wanting to do paid.
At any number of creators? Because I feel like if you only do like you said, like one creator or like 2, it's like high chance that both of them maybe won't work or flop, and like, oh, you didn't learn too much. But if you have enough, you maybe find like signs like, okay, that type of creator is probably what we should focus on. What would you say is like the minimum number of creators you should test the first campaign?
I mean, I tested with someone recently, just 2, and like there was a difference between the 2 of them. One was cool. More like lifestyle, and one was more like just fashion, like outfit of the day. I would say like there wasn't a difference in terms of like conversions, but like I would say like the guy who did more styling videos did get better engagement. But like there's also pluses, minuses. The other guy who was more lifestyle was like posted again of us and came to our pop-ups and like was very engaged in other ways that makes us want to like continue partnering with him. So you can't just compare a result to like the actual stats. Like you have to consider like what else did you get out of the ship, outside of just like the actual posting. Did you get other perks? Were there other benefits? Did you learn things from their customers? I think that's really important to understand, and to also document, because that's a reason to also like maybe continue to partner with them or partner with people within that genre of influencer. But I was going to say like, in terms of testing, like I would say like a healthy testing to start, if you have a small budget, if you can do it, I'd say like 5. For paid, just so like you have like something, a bunch that you can compare to, versus just one against another.
Yeah. I'm just feeling like Yeah, because the idea obviously is like you want to test enough so the brand just don't give up the first time. Like, because if they just do
Yeah.
one collab, oh, didn't work, and they just give up, like, then it's better for them to maybe save a little bit more on the budgets for 3-4 months and then run a real campaign so they can actually like learn from it and see if it's worth continuing or not. But I feel like I
Yeah.
hear stories where they just do 1 or 2 collabs and like flops, and then like, no, this is not for us. Then they go back to meta ads, which is, then they are even more dependent on that platform.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why a big part of my job right now is like a consultant is like educating them on like why something performs some way, like what other benefits from this post we got. Like it's again, like they're only seeing like we got no conversions, like there's nothing we got out of it. But like how did it compare? Like you were able to reach a customer base that would like is well, you were able to reach your demo that through an influencer who has a lot of pull on their community and is trusted, and build a relationship. You're able to like, leverage them hopefully in the future and continue things versus a meta ad. Like there's no person behind that. There's no like relationship. So I think like, yes, it can seem like a failure to some people. And then they're like, oh, I don't want to go back to this. But like, it takes time, and I think people just aren't patient. So yes, if you have like no budget, like I would say wait a little bit, maybe try testing like UGC content creation to see how that performs on your brand channel, and like start with just seeding with no paid. But I think building paid into it in some capacity is important, because like that's unfortunately the only way you can really build out influencer relationships and really test and learn is through like building the relationship with them through paid opportunity.
Yeah. And before we round up, what are the tips and tricks you always share with startups? Like the go-to that they always need to hear from you?
Well, I definitely would say, I think I feel like I mentioned most of them, but the DMs, I think the quick and simple DM outreach when it comes to seeding or even paid partnership. I think DMs are better than email because they just seem a little less spammy. I think like having someone on your team who's engaging with the community, whether that be like the social coordinator or like if you have an engagement person that's engaging with influencer feeds and with other content that's outside of your own, I think's great from a like community building perspective. I think to like be open to testing other genres. I think it's been hard for me sometimes to like convince people like founders or whatever to test something that seems not correct. But a lot of times that's the golden ticket. So like if you have product or budget to test people that might seem outside of the box, do that and and then finally I'd say let influencers like do what they do, which is create, and they know how to create and convey a product or a brand to their audience. So as little like messaging or like direction as possible, I think is really important, because they want to be able to not feel like the pressure, and they're able to know what works and what doesn't work for their audience. So I think letting them kind of take the leap creatively is super important.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that thing with different kind of niches or different type of profiles that you maybe are not thinking about. I've heard from many brands, like when I asked them like, okay, what's working for you? I'm like, yeah, it's weird, but this profile works for us. And it's like the content is not that nice, but she's converting for us. So we're like, we would just continue with it. And so, yeah, I totally agree on that point. Like just be a little bit open and just test a little bit more. And when the revenue comes in, they will be happy, right?
Yeah, I think the nice thing I've heard from clients is like, I've had one of my clients, she was like, I can tell that you were back from vacation because our social engagement just really went up. And I was like, so like they noticed the difference. Like there is a difference when you're interacting with influencers, with whoever, and influencers are posting or you're seeding, like you do see that boost in at least engagement when it comes to social or clicks to the site. It just isn't going to be an overnight success. And like, if that's what you're looking for, I think that like you might not always immediately find it with influencers. I think it's just it's a game. But I think it's a really rewarding game. And I think like community is becoming such a huge part of brands, goal, and influencers are a huge part of that and building that out. So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of cool things happening in the space.
Yeah, for sure. Great, but fun. I mean, thanks for joining and sharing all the insights. I hope like startups feel like more eager now to at least test it and get started.
Yeah, me too. I feel like I'm feeling it out there. I think a lot of people are. So fingers crossed we see more, but hopefully this helps a lot of people.